Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to do something a little bit different as we're going to talk about Warhammer The Old World, or better yet said, the lack thereof. Mostly because, well, Games Workshop announced Warhammer The Old World in November 2019, quite a long time ago, and they said it was going to be quite far away. Now, this was pretty much expected as, well, Warhammer Fantasy by the end of its lifespan was not in a really good place. Some rules were very definitely broken, some factions were very much unplayable, and yeah, they need to kind of do an overhaul. Even I, who owns pretty much every army from 4th edition onwards, knows that Warhammer Fantasy needs to have a pretty big shape-up of rules if it's going to be marketable to new players. Now, when originally announced, Games Workshop had the following statement. This is a long way off. Years, more than 2, like 3 or more, definitely not soon. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. We kind of expected that the old world was not going to be here within a year or two because, well, yeah, they've got to redo a lot of stuff. They've got to make up new models and so on. Keep in mind that many of the old casts, which are still usable in Age of Sigmar, are getting very, very old. It's honestly baffling why they're still available for Age of Sigmar, considering that the quality has taken a massive dip when compared to, say, for example, the newer stuff, or a lot of stuff has been moved to Finecast, which players don't want to use. So what exactly is this video about? Well, as you can tell from the title, they're kind of killing the hype for the old world, and I don't mean the distance. It's fine for the game to be a few years away. Like I said, I understand why it needs to be a few years away, but the fact is that the drip feeding of information is, well, next to non-existent. There's loads of different articles that have come out, but they're spread out between a minimum of 3 months, 4 months, and so on, and it just means that we know nothing. In fact, in most cases, they're just repeating stuff that we already know. Again, I'm not here to complain too much because, yes, they have released some information which is actually quite new and quite exciting. It does build up the hype, but when you're spreading out the hype that badly, where it's pretty much getting forgettable to this point, well, people are going to start losing interest. The funny thing is, you'd expect that they would have started marketing a lot heavier now with the release of Total War Warhammer 3, and no, they just gave us information that we already kind of knew because they said it in a previous blog post without outright saying it. That's the whole Grand Cathay thing. The original article, which released on November 2019, didn't really have that much information. In fact, they tried to push Age of Sigmar more than Warhammer Fantasy, which is baffling considering that this was supposed to be the announcement for Warhammer The Old World. This is pushed multiple times throughout the whole article, and then we do get a little bit of information, which is the whole The Old World is to Warhammer Age of Sigmar as the Horus Heresy is to Warhammer 40,000, which again pushes more Age of Sigmar stuff, but at least it confirms it's its own setting. So, you know, we kind of guessed square bases and so on before they confirmed it a few months later. Then we had some radio silence until February of 2020, which gave us a new look at the Old World map. This is just parts of the Empire, Norska, Kislev, the Southern Realms, and Bretonnia, but it gave us a lot to look at, as obviously many of us were concerned as to how this was going to be, what was going to change drastically, and so on. Keep in mind that a lot of people that they're trying to market to are either old school Warhammer Fantasy fans, you know, those with the nostalgia goggles like myself, as that would be easy money, and obviously stuff like Vermintide fans, Total War fans. These people are easy money in Games Workshop's eyes. Well, that is if they ever release the product where the games are still relevant. All in all, I've got no complaints about the map because at the end of the day, we're starting to see changes that we kind of expected anyway, so this did provide a lot of hype, but it was still 3 months apart. Within that very same article, we had an even better look where artists were painting on the map. We see Louise Sugden there. She's a very prolific painter within the Warhammer community team, especially since she does the whole masterclasses for Warhammer Plus. So, you know, things were looking good, and we saw some icons there, which made a lot of people very happy, as those icons are following around the Age of 3 Emperors storyline, so right before the Great War Against Chaos. This is a very important plot point in Warhammer Fantasy. Now, while the news was so far apart, it was kind of expected because it was November, eventually staff were going to break for Christmas and so on, and this kind of gave a lot of hope to the fan base, mainly because of that last paragraph. It's still early days for the Old World project, but it's great to see things already starting to come together. Over the coming months, we'll keep you up to date with news from the project as it continues to take shape, including the lore, art, rules, and eventually new models. So at this point, the hype rose and rose, including myself. I was so excited as it made us believe that, well, it looks like they might be further along, so we're going to get news in a more steady pace. And many of us were thinking, oh, this might end up being something akin to maybe the news drip that they were doing for the Sisters of Battle. Even then, that wasn't too great. That was just very slow, you know? But I ate my words in March of 2020 as we had another update, which was really exciting. Kislev confirmed, which was something that many people have been waiting for, as obviously Kislev had a supplement in 6th edition, but no real proper army. They didn't really give us too much information. They showed us how the lands of Kislev have changed a little bit, and how they're taking inspiration from the older models, plus showing us some artwork for the newer stuff like the Ice Guard. This was received in different ways by the fan base, which is perfectly fine. I myself am a big fan, and yeah, Kislev, very, very exciting. There was a little bit more silence once again until May of 2020, but this was another big update, again focusing on Kislev, but confirming that of Bear Cavalry, something which has been, well, memed constantly with the Kislev fans for a long time now. This made Kislev fans get really hyped up, especially with the fact of a new army, something completely different. A lot of people have been playing Warhammer Fantasy for many years now, so they wanted new toys. Many of them are thinking about changing to different factions and so on when Warhammer The Old World releases, and Kislev seems to be a massive opportunity for that. But the hype quickly died down again until December of 2020, where Bretonnia was confirmed, which many people have been waiting for because the Bretonnian models didn't really age too well, and they've always been kind of popular despite the fact that they never really got updated for 7th or 8th edition. Now the heavily armored knights have been confirmed to come, and many people are just really excited, hoping for some good rules, and I am one of those people, owning about 6,000 points of Bretonnia, more or less, painted at least. So we got some new heraldry, it gave us a bit more storyline, we realize now a lot more that we are in the age of 3 emperors, there's some little hints towards high elves. It's a very exciting post, but still very far away. Obviously at this point I do have to say, keep in mind that at this point, or well, much earlier, Games Workshop staff, like the rest of the world, were working from home. And yes, that's a good thing, because at the end of the day, they needed to keep their staff safe. You'd be surprised how many companies weren't doing that. So it was understandable that the information was going to be less and less, and it became a bit of a problem here as we start to notice that it just became less frequent as time went on. At this point, silence again, quite heavily, but Total War Warhammer 3 was announced and we got to see some Kislev stuff, and there was the confirmation of Grand Cathay. At this point, everyone thought, and they should, that every model that they're going to see in Total War Warhammer, or already been seeing since now the game has been long released, is essentially going to be translated into the miniatures. So whilst we didn't have any official Games Workshop information, barring a few things where they did in cross-promotion and so on, the fanbase was once again quite happy. This was again just a 3-month break, so everyone was quite keen. The silence continued until July 2021, but this was a big post. Once again, they confirmed Kislev, which is pretty strange considering that we already had confirmation of Kislev. We got some changes to the map once again too, which was quite exciting because now we see lore in there, we see a lot more fleshed out maps, a lot more fleshed out artwork, and not only that, but the confirmation of square bases, the fact that the scaling is staying the same, the fact that rules are going to take interpretation from not only 3rd edition all the way up to 8th, but they'll have a little bit of influence from 1 and 2. Names will stay the same. There's no Uruks, there's going to be Orcs. We're going to the whole age of 3 emperors. Once again, more confirmation of that. Square bases, they push it once again because it's so important. And no release date, which is fine. None of us expected a release date just yet. But this was a big news drop for many people. I know personally many Warhammer Fantasy fans who might have quit because of the end times, who started coming back, playing 8th edition, 6th edition, 7th edition, just to try and get the rust off, repainting their armies. That's something that I'm doing myself to prepare them. The hype for the game rose and rose and rose, and it looked like maybe we were going to start getting some more information, because if they've already confirmed more or less where rules are coming from, where different things are happening, then maybe information might start coming out on a monthly basis again. We started getting information regarding Grand Cathay, which was a collaboration between Games Workshop and Creative Assembly, and we saw Warhammer The Old World art there. So we more or less knew that Cathay was going to be announced eventually. They did eventually, but at this point we kind of knew. The hype started rising once again because Cathay is a faction that many people have heard about in various different army books, but we never really had a true interpretation of them. So now we have two new playable factions in Warhammer The Old World, two completely new factions. This was around 4 months after the whole square base announcement, which was already a little bit too far, but still it was better than nothing. And then we got more information. And then October came around, and it was really surprising because it took us to something completely different. Whilst they haven't really finished giving us information on Kislev, or even pretty much anything on Grand Cathay, they did a complete U-turn and decided to head down to the land of the Border Princes. This showed us the lands there, giving us some information of what we already know there. The territory is being run by makeshift kingdoms, by various different exiles, and heraldry of factions that we know, obviously the Imperials, the Vampire Counts, the Bretonnians, the Kislevites now, but then heraldry that we've never seen before. So many people got excited. Maybe this means that we're going to get more factions. Are these Talians? Are these Estalians? Are these Arabians? Are we finally going to get separated dogs of war? Is this finally what we've been asking for the longest time? Which admittedly is one of the coolest things I saw from these Old World posts as someone who's been waiting for the Southern Realms for a long time, and now it looks like we might get it, although it's not being confirmed. But still, the U-turn was a bit strange. Why start focusing on the south when you can focus on Kislev? Finish establishing some stuff out. Maybe give us a bit more information on Grand Cathay. It was very strange, as yes, there was loads of lore information dumps provided by Andy Hall, the principal writer of Warhammer 3, mainly because he did some interviews with, say, myself and Lore Master Sotek in the Lorebeards podcast, as he was using what can be described as the army books for Kislev and Cathay. Now, they do say that this is stuff that they wrote in the 8th edition style, but I really much doubt that they're going to write something in the style of 8th edition when they could have easily written the rules for that in the newest style, unless, obviously, Old World follows more of an 8th edition rule set. It's very strange on how they said that, but it was quite bizarre that new lore, such as Grand Cathay and Kislev later on in a different interview, was released through Total War and not Warhammer Community. It's a bit strange there because, don't get me wrong, I appreciated those opportunities massively because we all got some information that loads of people were wondering about, yet they weren't posted by the official Warhammer Community website. So there's loads of people who might not be following Total War, who might not even know, and it's a bit strange. At least they could have said, look, these things are happening, you know? I'd say that that was the missed opportunity for the ultimate type of cross-promotion, especially since that lore came directly from their books. And then silence once again until February of 2022, where Grand Cathay was confirmed for the tabletop. Now, that's all well and good. They showed off a bit of the Grand Cathay map and so on, but seeing as last year, quite a long time ago, we already had artwork with Warhammer The Old World on it, I mean, at this point, we all kind of knew. It's very weird for them to just focus on Cathay whilst they just moved down to the Border Princes, and the fact that, again, we all kind of knew. Like, everyone knew at this point. There was no need to just reaffirm it, where we could have had some more information on, say, the Border Princes, the Vampire Counts. You know, some stuff that kind of hasn't been talked about yet. So that was pretty much just an overview of what's happened, and you can see why I'm a little bit frustrated. It's been a long time now since Warhammer The Old World got announced. We're barely getting news. In fact, most of the articles are just repeating everything once again, just with different wording. The drip feed itself has always been a massive issue when it comes to Games Workshop. They love to drip feed every little bit of information they can, just at such massive paces that you need to go back and reread former articles because you've forgotten about it by this point. While the sporadic posts themselves are quite exciting in some cases, more so than others, it would be great if Games Workshop decided now is the time to start pushing this a little bit more. Give us some more information. Now, I'm not a cartographer, but I'm imagining that you can't just start working on the Empire areas and then skip all the way to Grand Cathay without like, you know, working a bit on the Darklands and the Mountains of Morn, as those areas are in between, because there might be some sizing issues or lining up issues, unless obviously the map is fully done, which makes me think that the map is fully done at this point. But with all the possible lore in Warhammer Fantasy, they could realistically start posting once a month, especially if they're just going to be reusing and rewording some stuff just to keep the hype rolling, because it's just looking like nothing's really happening. Again, since it's easy enough to know that lore isn't going to fundamentally change for most of the races and factions already established, they could start doing some spotlights on the High Elves, the Wood Elves, Bretonnia, a bit more just fleshing out some stuff. We don't have to see concept art, we just need a bit of a lore post. Just something to keep the ball rolling, and they can start confirming some factions just by means of little bits of lore. The Great War Against Chaos, the Age of Free Emperors, what some Tomb King factions are doing, because we've seen Tomb King logos, we've seen Hobgoblin logos, we've seen Chaos Dwarf logos. Why is that not being expanded enough just to give us at least a monthly update, which would be great for morale for the fan base that was waiting for a long time? Again, they don't have to give us the release date just yet. It's impossible to demand such a thing, but just giving us some context, some little bits of lore tidbits that we know already happened, but just to bring up discussion more than anything, just to keep the ball rolling, as it's becoming a little bit tiring seeing no information whatsoever. This is not trying to sound over-entitled or anything, it's the fact that I myself, and I know many others, are very excited for Warhammer The Old World. We've been waiting for this for years. It's been 7 years now since the end times, but a lot of us still held up hope that we might see, well, the return in some way, shape or form, which we are getting. But there's little to no information 3 years later. We're not expecting miniatures, we're expecting little bits like they've been giving us, but at least at a more reliable rate like we did get last year. It's very strange that we're just not getting any information, whilst we can see on the Games Workshop official site that they were looking for model designers and graphic designers and so on. So if they're already working on models, they must be fairly ahead with rules. It doesn't matter if the game is a year away, 2 years away, 3 years away, but now is the time to start building up the hype more. Because by the information that we've been given, well, it looks like the game is either going to release in this really poor state with no factions changed and so on, because it makes us believe this. We don't really have any information regarding the Empire, or Kislev, or Cathay. We just have some bare bones stuff. Well, let's be honest, we really don't have information regarding anything, just footnotes, and footnotes really mean nothing. You'd think more type of cross-promotion would happen too, considering Total War Warhammer 3 is just launched, and if Games Workshop was smart enough to cross-promote like they do with other video games, then the hype could rise more. It's simple enough to say, okay, some of these models are going to stay the same from the Age of Sigmar line, so maybe some people can start buying now, you know, that type of stuff. One thing is certain is I'm feeling less and less excited. I'm still very much excited, but we know nothing, and it's becoming really strange. But what do you guys think regarding this whole old world issue? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a bit of a discussion. I know there's a lot of tabletop fans, I know there's a lot of people who mostly played Total War, who are interested in Warhammer The Old World, but there's less information there than we've had for Total War Warhammer, and let's be honest, the drip feeding there was pretty brutal. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games, where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel's been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.